Okay, so I read the Picture of Dorian Gray and I mistakenly guilt-tripped myself into thinking that I was like him. Which I'm not. I'm not. You were made to be adored. That's what Basil says to him. Like, imagine living in a world where everyone feels inferior to you because of your beauty, and every freaking mistake you do in your life is just forgiven. Pretty privilege on steroids. Well, I mean, wouldn't it be nice? Well, Dorian Gray would argue otherwise, I think. Today, I want to analyze the psychology behind Oscar Wilde's novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray, because it's a very intriguing and gay novel that has made me question my own morality. So let's buckle up and discover the hidings of the painting. And yes, I don't know why I have the Apple Pencil in my hands. I'm gonna break it, so yeah, let's just leave it here. Everyone's like, oh, Dorian's so vain and he's so narcissistic, not in a clinical sense, but in a popular, selfish sense. And yeah, many of the reviews and opinions that I've looked up are people talking about how vain he is. Let's just put ourselves into his shoes for once. Okay. You're a young, impressionable boy who's always been validated. And your whole environment has always, you know, reinforced this idea of you deserve everything good in life just because you're beautiful. So he believes it. It's his reality. Like Dorian Gray's reality is he is better than the rest because he looks better than the rest, and it's especially noticeable once he looks at the portrait and he looks at himself and he's like, smash. We should all do that, but he just takes it to the next level. His reality is that he's very conditioned by the people who surround him, especially because he grew without parents or close family. Most of the extrinsic validation that he receives is from practically strangers. So yeah, it must have been really hard for him to grasp a sense of self. And that's why he gets lost in the portrait. As the story develops, we see how he just gets away with vanity and selfishness and doing whatever he wants, which, I mean, it would be nice, but it's not. In the first part of the story, we see how the protagonist loses himself because he's searching for himself, which is a bit paradoxical, but bear with me. I see it as a coming of age story gone wrong. Placing too much value in material things and pleasures bring him some sort of emptiness and self-destruction. Instead of finding, he loses himself through self-absorption, which I've mentioned, it's really paradoxical, but it's like losing yourself because you're too focused on you. Like everyone on the internet's like telling you, focus on you. But I think we are losing ourselves by only focusing on us. What do you think, guys? What's your opinion? What's your take on that? Now I want to go and talk about two other characters that leave a footprint on Dorian's life. And the first one is Basil. And the notes on the character that I made are: one, gay. The novel screams gay. If you know the story about the author. Um, but it's so like entertaining. It doesn't feel illegal, but it feels, kind of like mysterious. And the fact that the editors told Wilde to just delete and change many things on the novel, especially what Basil thought about Dorian. Oh my god. Also, many researchers were saying that Basil was like a motherly figure. I wouldn't say it serves necessarily as like a mother, but he certainly loves him in a motherly way. The kind of like unconditional love of, no, my child hasn't done anything wrong. Please tell me you haven't done anything wrong because you're an angel in my eyes. That kind of love is the love that he provides to Dorian. We could also say that it was because he was in love with him, But yeah, like many opinions on the internet are saying that he, well, no, is he one? And then, and then we have my favorite worst character. My Then we have a prick called Lord Henry. And to be honest, the story would be like 20 pages long if he had just shut the fuck up. He never stops talking, and he talks in like paradoxes and nonsense, and it's just like smoke. Makes no sense. In the beginning, it's kind of like interesting, But as the story progresses, you realize that Lord Henry is just full of, I was gonna say crap, but air, literally air. He talks nonsense like a politician in campaign. It's so annoying. But I like the fact that it's annoying because Oscar developed a great character. Lord Henry delivers what he's supposed to deliver, which is corrupting the youth. Literally. He's manipulative, destructive, and he's bored enough to corrupt an 18-year-old. Well, no, he's 20. A 20-year-old for 18 years. People in the Victorian era really needed to find hobbies. Man, and some argue that he was a terrible father figure for Dorian because, well, he literally ruined his life. I want to have a question because many people say, no, it wasn't necessarily Dorian's fault because he was a young, impressionable man who got corrupted by an older guy. Oh my god, knowing Oscar Wilde's like life and being intertwined with this, oh my god, that's okay. Anyway, let's stick to the story. To which extent is the Lord responsible for the destruction of Dorian's life? Many people say it's his fault, but I also believe it's Dorian's fault because he's an adult. So there are many factors. I don't know, guys. What do you think? I don't think there's a correct answer. Reminder, guys. Beware of the people to who you surround yourself with because they can literally destroy your life if they're shitty enough and bored enough. Okay, then I want to talk about mirrors because this novel places a lot of value in mirrors because Dorian needs to like find a sense of self. He mirrors and sees himself through the people around him. I mean, the clearest, most obvious sign is a portrait. It's literally a painting of him that Basil paints. Since the very first moment that Dorian looks at the picture, he realizes that he's more beautiful than the rest. Up till that point, he didn't know it. Like, he wasn't 100% aware that he was that beautiful and amazing. And he looks at himself and he's like, smash! And as I've said, together with the terrible advice of Lord Henry, more on that later, Dorian kickstarts his chase of immediate gratification. From that point on, we see how the protagonist acquired a self of identity and starts, making decisions by himself. Stayed by Lord Henry. When he sees his portrait and realizes that he's like an adult man who can do whatever he wants, he's like, okay, you know what? I'm super excited to live my own life, but I'm afraid of getting old and getting wrinkles. I love this meme of like, R.I.P. Dorian Gray, he would have loved to Botox. Yeah, he would have. This is another, little advice for everyone, and me included. Do not place all our value on one thing. Do not put all our eggs on one basket. Because he places all his value in his beauty. It's like, when I lose it, I'm gonna be no one. Life would be worthless if I were to be ugly. And that's really cute. Because he cannot change that. Well, he tries. It ends terribly. And this fear leads him to make an evil pact with the portraits. It will portray all his ugliness while he stays this youthful and beautiful forever. But hey, it's life. Nothing comes for free. We readers are made to think that the portrait is just an object of Dorian's mistakes, but it is not. It exerts a lot of power on him. It's simultaneously shaping him, and I think I said that word right. Not pardon me. English is my third language. The protagonist is constantly haunted by the portrait, which means that he's unconsciously giving it some of his autonomy. And it is all out of fear and insecurity. Dorian has laid his bed, but he doesn't want to sleep on it. So he tries to, I don't know, just go to someone else's bed. Well, he goes to many people's bed. And his fear of becoming bad, and he ends up being even more terrible than he could have ever imagined. I don't know what's happening to me today. Sybil Vane, okay, the love interest. In the research I've done, many people are getting a bit too Freudy, mentioning that he saw his love interest as her mother. And personally, I don't fully agree with this statement, because if we say that he sees his mom on the girl, that means that he falls for her because of his mommy issues. And I think there are more factors, okay, that play. Let me explain my theory. There's not one reason, one factor, but many. The first one is infatuation. He's young. He's never been in love before. She's a beautiful girl. It's Dorian's first contact with love. Think about your first love or your first crush. Could you stop fantasizing about your first crush? So it is normal for a young boy like him to idealize her while not having the tools to just, keep his feet on the ground and stop fantasizing about her and not making her perfect, ideal. Rather than falling for her because he sees his mom, I just think that he doesn't know how to stop himself and what a great relationship is, because he has never seen a healthy relationship while growing up, because he's not orphaned but semi. Also, because of his narcissistic tendencies, he believes that he deserves the best. Therefore, what he loves must be the best and perfect. But turns out she's not. Poor girl. She's just infatuated also. And just, when you talked to your crush back in high school or middle school and you started just yeah, that was Seville. It is all due to his inexperience and entitlement. And now we're in a moment in time where he's very aware of his reputation and wants to maintain it and be a perfect man. So when the young actress shames him in front of his friends because she acted terribly, Dorian's perception of her does a literal 180 and love becomes hate. And because he lacks emotional regulation, he goes backstage to talk to her. He throws a literal temper tantrum to a 17-year-old girl. And the 17-year-old girl also has no freaking emotional regulation. So after he goes away and claims to never want to see her again, she ends it all. And the funniest part is that when Dorian becomes aware that there's no longer Seville in life, he's like, oh, what a shame, beautiful girl. And it is in that moment that we realize that Dorian has no empathy, especially towards someone who he claimed he loved so much. It was his literal fiance, but they had known each other for 3 weeks and had spoken twice. So yeah, it was they were both delulu. Now I want to talk about the end. I know I've gone from the beginning to the end, but I just want to highlight interesting stuff. So yeah, the end. He used to live in an imaginary world that other people had created for him. But now he's changed. Now that he has been a mess and now that he has sinned in any possible way, he's chasing after his real self. He's a new man. After 18 years of pure pleasure seeking, he realized that he must take care of others. But it is easier said than done. I love how narcissistic it all is, that he doesn't try to change until someone else tries to take his life. Yeah, it just goes to show how selfish he was. Well, self-centered. Well, also he was everything self. So yeah, it is easier said than done, but he wants to change. He goes to Lord Henry and he's like, hey, I'm not 18 anymore. Now I'm 38. I'm old enough to be myself and to be a better man. Now I've changed. And Henry's literal reaction is like, no, claiming that Dorian's change is shallow and that he's just lying to himself. However, Dorian seems actually determined to change. But his determination doesn't come a long way, because he's very haunted by his past. So much so that he has a literal portrait of all his mistakes. He might have bought into the idea of being a better man, but his soul hasn't. And the portrait certainly doesn't know about redemption. He can lie to himself, but he cannot lie to the portrait. Deep inside, he knows it's only a facade, and because true redemption requires accountability, not just regret. So in an act of desperation, he stabs the portrait. Wanting to rip off the haunting pain of his mistakes, Dorian shreds the painting. But the portrait is just a reflection of him. So he was stabbed by his own vanity. Remember, guys, the more self-centered, the more we lose ourselves. It is just a false sense of grandiosity. In reality, highly narcissistic people seek a lot of extrinsic validation because they're really insecure within themselves. And the more we lose ourselves, the more manipulators can take advantage of us, and I don't think that's something you want. And also, don't lie to yourself. Like, if you've done something wrong, which we all have, you must accept it and try to take accountability and change. Because if you become delusional and think that it's everyone else's fault, you'll end up stabbing yourself. Don't do it. Don't be like Dorian Gray, please. I film this video at night, and I usually film in the mornings. And I think I'm liking it more at night because, I don't know, my mind is just like in a blah, blah, blah state. So yeah, just have a really nice week, day, moment. Yeah. And kiss yourself in the mirror. Yeah.